Yeah.
Yeah.
So do you have plans for sure?
We have 4 trips planned.
I'm impressed.
Week to a week and a half at a shot, just about every month. So, yeah.
Hello?
Yeah, I haven't had time to look at it. I mean, they could have no cash reserve levy. It could be a lot of different things.
Yeah. That maple there.
I missed Felicia Beigel's name on the hiring list.
Yes, she was on this one, and that's it. I actually saw it before we discussed it at board, but I couldn't congratulate her.
I thought that
Well, that was just the UEN.
Well, I see both ways.
Big old mark, so where's that? There's green.
With the stuff out, we get that people look nicer, like I saw.
Hi, Karina.
They're all. Why don't you just get it cut down and then I'll hey, I got a
Ready? Okay. Good evening. We'll call the meeting to order. This is the time and place for the regularly scheduled school board meeting for April 18, 2022. Welcome to those of you here in attendance with us. Welcome to anybody joining us via the live stream or watching later on. A couple of things. We've got a pink sign-up sheet here on the table for anybody who wants to give public comment during the public comment time. Please keep in mind that Iowa law prohibits the discussion of specific employees of the district or their job performance. Please also understand that in accordance with board policy, board members may not respond to your comments in order to comply with open meeting laws. With that, I'll introduce the folks here at the board table with me. To my right, Zach Wall, Bonnie Lowry, Jan McGinnis. To my left, Karina Hernandez, Sarah Faltis, Leah Stanley. Here at the center table with me, Paulette Newbold, the board secretary, Dr. Theron Schutte, the superintendent of schools, and I am Sean Heitman. We've got 3 of our student school board members here tonight, Aaron Seeberger, Phoebe Hermanson, and Taylor Jones. With that, would you all please join me in reading the school district mission statement? We develop learners who have the knowledge, skills, and positive mindset to successfully pursue a meaningful future through personalized learning experiences. And would you all please stand as you're able and join me in the pledge? I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Are there any changes to the agenda?
There are not.
Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
Move to approve?
Second.
Lowry, Faltis, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Motion carries 7-0. Adam?
Hello. So for recognition tonight, we have a couple more. April is a big month for recognizing different staff groups of ours here at the school. So this week is National Public School Volunteer Week. Those of you who've been involved in JA, or I know there was a ton of volunteers at last week's meal packaging event. Those are just two kind of present examples of volunteerism, but there's examples throughout the school year of how members of the community come into our schools and they learn about how classes work, how teachers interact with kids, and it's great for community building. It's great for our kids to see folks from inside the community. So, and then the other big day coming up here next week, next Wednesday, is Administrative Professionals Day. Administrative professionals include secretarial staff, building administrative assistants, and administrative assistants across the district. And again, that's just another group of folks who keep all of our buildings, all of our activities running and everybody organized, and they help parents by answering questions. They're important when those volunteers come into our buildings. They can tell those volunteers where the classroom is, and they just, they're a lot of times one of those really important pieces to the team of every building in our district. So I believe that's.
Okay. Thanks, Adam.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Turning then to the consent agenda, we've got minutes from the April 4th meeting. Dr. Ryan's coming up, so somebody of note in personnel.
Yes. Thank you. We have one resignation, a retirement, excuse me, of a food service supervisor. Her name's Nancy Meyer. Food service director Lynn Large had the following to say about Nancy. Nancy has worked for the food service department for over 27 years. She's worked in many capacities within the department throughout the years, but is retiring from her current role as the kitchen supervisor at Lenahan Production Kitchen and Bakery. In retirement, Nancy looks forward to crafting, traveling with her husband, and spending time with her granddaughter. We thank Nancy for her tireless dedication to the food service department and wish her all the happiness in retirement. She was always a joy to have in professional development, too. We'll miss her. Thanks.
Thank you. Looking at interagency agreements and contracts, there's an agreement to establish and operate an alternative options education school program with Iowa Net High Academy, a field experience student teaching practicum and internship agreement with Buena Vista University, a service agreement with Mid-Iowa Community Action for Bobcat University summer programming, a sub-grant agreement with the Iowa College Aid Commission for Gear Up Iowa Future Ready, and a Tierney change request for the Lenahan Intermediate School Audiovisual Project. Questions about any of those items?
I have one clarifying question. Our agreement to operate an alternative educational program is on top of our current alternative high school program, or is it in conjunction with?
It's in addition to, it's an actual dropout, return to school to help graduate. I don't know, Matt, if you want to speak to that a little bit, that high.
Sorry, Matt.
Apologies. Iowa Net High Academy is one of the dropout prevention funded programs we utilize. So sometimes students, they have trouble learning on campus and they need an alternative schedule. And Iowa Net High is able to work with them to provide that. So it's a pretty particular program. There's, you're really looking for students who are getting ready to graduate high school and significantly undercredited. That's the target population they work with. But they can provide all services, whether it's disability services, core service, really whatever we need.
So this is a continuation of current services that we're receiving. Thank you for the clarification.
And is it mostly virtual or is it in person?
They do it mostly virtual. There are check-ins sometimes they'll do in person with certain students if it works better for them, but Most of the instruction is through kind of a Google Classroom type of platform over a Chromebook.
Thank you, Matt.
Thanks, Matt. Looking at open enrollments, we have two in for the current school year, one out for next year, and one denial for next year. Paul, anything to note in bills or the monthly financials? Looking at gifts and grants and bequests, we have a donation from First United Methodist Church of Marshalltown in the amount of $1,000 to purchase books for Rogers Elementary School students. And then we've got, I believe, Brad, is this your project? So if anybody has questions, are there any questions for Brad's project? Okay. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved?
Second.
McGinnis, Hernandez, all in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, say no. Motion carries 7-0. Seeing as how there's no one on the pink sheet. Chris, come tell us about scuba diving.
Can I do a hand up first?
Yeah.
I know. How are you, Chris? Good.
So
It's good.
as Chris passes those out, we do have Steve Kitchen, who provided from STC Diving, who provided the scuba diving instruction. But he has the link for tonight's meeting. It doesn't appear that he's on, so I'm trying to get a hold of him. I'm sure Chris can do a great job.
I'll try.
But yeah, I just wanted to let you guys know we'll continue.
Video? Did you get the video emailed to you? Yes.
I think we'll stay
Oh, okay. Okay.
So do we want to give Mr. Kitchen a little bit more time, or like I said, I think
Do you know what time he was planning on?
he told me earlier today he was planning on 5 p.m.
Okay.
I can fill in a little bit.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay.
You
Thanks,
can
Chris.
improv, and
I
we'll
can
see if
improv,
he's going to
yeah.
join us.
Okay.
Well, thank you for having us. It's an exciting event, and it's the buzz of the high school a little bit, and it's kind of fun. I caught word of this program through some teachers that have done it in the Des Moines schools, and he's from Des Moines. And I was talking about fun things for the kids to do in swimming, and alternative things, unique things, and one of them said scuba diving. I'm like, no way. And they said, yeah, he'll come in and do everything for you, and there's, a slight fee, but for what they're doing is just a great experience. So him and his crew came, and they, it was snowing the first time, and I think snowing the second time they came. And they loaded all their stuff. They brought about 20 tanks and all the gear that you need, and it's about, what do you say, like $1,100 of gear that they have on, each student does, that they get to use. And then the tanks vary in prices, but, overall, the kids didn't realize how much it involved to scuba dive, but that was part of it. That it does involve a lot, but past that, the experience was just amazing. Some of the students were just like, oh my gosh, this is so awesome. And another student said, this is the best experience I've had in my whole life so far. And another student said, scuba diving, I thought we were just gonna have those little snorkel things. All this stuff. So they were pretty excited. So he brought all his equipment. We spent the first half going over safety, that's their first main concern, and then just have fun and enjoy this experience in the water that you don't think landlocked Iowa students can experience that. And went through that. They got to get their goggles to fit right, and that was pretty fun. And one of the instructors said, everybody looks bad in a goggle. It doesn't matter, just put it on and it sticks. And they got that figured out. And then they got to go in the water and then figure out their suits. And they got, well, not suits, it's a vest that they have on that can inflate and deflate. And then on that goes their tank. And then also they have a weight belt, because the key is so they can stay at the bottom. And if they don't, even though they have that stuff, they'll float up. And so they put the weight belt on them, and he kind of sizes them out. Does a great job of doing that. They get their vest on, and they put their tank on. They have their goggles already on. they get their little air compressor or breathing thing and make sure that works right. And the coolest part I didn't realize is that they have this switch that's hooked to their vest that'll inflate so they can come up. They turn it the other way, it lets them go down and sink. So if they're at the bottom and they're like, I want to come up and just see what everybody's doing, they go up and then they go down. And it was so fun to watch them just do that. Some of the pictures have circulated, but there's a little window at the high school that's really convenient to have that. So I wasn't underwater doing the pictures, I was on the outside. And just seeing them kind of like, whoa, and then trying to communicate also, they're like, trying to do all that stuff, and then they go and they go down. One fun experience was one girl, she kept pushing the wrong way, and her friend's like, get down here, and she's like, I'm trying, but she kept pushing up. So finally she said, grab my, you could tell she's saying, grab my hand, her face, and finally she grabbed her hand, and they both got in the picture, so that was pretty fun. And then the cool thing about them, they don't pressure them to do anything that they don't want to. They feel comfortable. They can stay in the shallow end. They can just sit on the bottom. And then once they feel comfortable, they can move on down to the deep end. There was 3 certified divers in there that kind of help them out. And kind of once they kind of got the feel of being at the bottom, they were playing catch with little torpedoes. And it was kind of cool because it's like in slow motion. It's really cool, and that's what the kid says. Everything was going so slow, that type of thing. And then they just made their way out when they were ready, and just very controlled. And your students did very good. I was so proud of them. And even one of the trainers, who's a teacher in Des Moines, said this is one of the best groups I've ever had. They were so well behaved, so well respectful to each other and the equipment and everything. So it was just an experience. And they're all, when are we going to do it again? When are we going to do it again? And I'm like, well, hopefully next year, we'll get him to come back. And Steve is a great guy. He has been doing it, if you can see in his bio there, for over 50 years, and just has an excitement for scuba diving and the things that it can teach you. So, we had a PD today, and I was just thinking scuba diving the whole time, self-learning and self-guided and finding, your confidence and that type of stuff. So it was a cool thing. So, you guys have any questions or anything?
Did you participate?
No, he said the second, you get in there. I go, well, next year I'll be ready. So I had a couple hips and a couple knees, and I'm like, I'll get them ready to go, and then I'll probably give it a go, because I was jealous. It was pretty fun. And they even, I was getting feedback from the staff, we need to do this, and I was like telling him about it, and one of the divers said, I bet we could do a teacher one, if any staff or teachers want to come and do a little session. So we'll see if maybe that would be something fun to try.
So Chris, how many sessions will they be with the kids?
There was just the ones, each class had one session.
One session.
Yeah, so.
Fun.
Yeah.
So it was like the swimming PE
Yeah,
class?
yeah,
Okay.
so it's just the swimming class. So we've kind of gone away from the, if you're not familiar with our PE, kind of traditional, and kind of geared towards what the students enjoy to be more active and more successful. And swimming is one that's kind of gone down and come up and gone. And this year we have two good classes of swimmers. And so I was like, well, we got block scheduling, plenty of time now, and it worked really good. And so I'm excited already. You can tell I'm kind of excited. I mean, it was just, I've still got the, ooh. So it's just so fun. You just can't quit smiling, I guess, is what. And the kids too, I said, hey, can I have a coat? They're talking, so I think it'll last them for a little while.
Right.
And so.
Do they talk to the students about what it takes to get certified?
Yep, yeah, and then that's what's cool too, is the different divers in there have done, like they've gone to Belize, they've gone to different places and but just shared their experiences that way. But also they said there's places in Iowa to dive, Brad was just talking about he got certified in Okoboji, and just places that, and they shared one of their experiences just this winter. They went up to Lake Michigan and cut out a big hole in the ice and went down in there, and the kids were like, oh my gosh, and things like that. So, yeah, I know, not for everybody, but just that there's all those experiences and the excitement that those guys showed. They've been diving all over the world, but they wanted to come and, they took off work to come help these kids, and some of them just volunteered to come because I just love scuba diving and want to share that with the students that, that's just a unique opportunity that you don't think of when you're in Iowa, so.
So this happened during a PE class during the day, so it's blocks, they have like
90 minutes.
90 minutes, wow.
Yep.
That
So
is
we
really-
came in our normal routine. They sat and listened to the presenter and the instructor and went over all the different safety things and different pieces of equipment that they'll have. And then while they were doing that, they got them all lined up kind of by height and sizes. And so that would speed that up. And so then they got in the water and got their goggle on and then got their vest kind of adjusted. Well, excuse me, first they put the weighted belt on and just did that to make sure it would hold them down. And then they put their tanks and their vest and their tanks on, and then they said, okay, you good? And then they went by one at a time and they sat on the bottom and you good? And thumbs up and all right, you're free to go. One thing that Steve said, because some of the kids said, oh, can we have flippers, have the fins? And he's like, no, we need to be able to catch you if you get into trouble. So just the divers have the fins. So he said, you're not that good yet. But no, really good. Well,
Thanks for sharing.
Yeah, thank you.
Any other questions? No? Okay. Did you get a hold of him or not? No. Darn it.
Yeah, that's what I
Yeah,
was thinking.
yeah.
And also, Chris made a nice short video too, just kind of overview of the diving unit or the scuba diving unit.
Right.
So we'll be pushing that out as well, just to go along with the information she shared tonight. So yeah, I apologize that Steve was not able to join us. I was looking forward to hearing his perspective on the lessons, but I will follow up with him and yeah, but
That'll be good. Yep.
thank you,
All right.
Chris.
Well, thank you again. Once again, thank you for letting me share. You can tell I'm still kind of excited when I talk about it. I don't even scuba dive yet. Thank you. Yep.
All right, Jackie, you gonna bring your crew up?
Yes, stay and cheer us on.
You can go.
Hi, everyone.
Hello.
Okay, MHS presentation tonight. We do have our attendance center plan. I will let everybody introduce themselves, and we're going to synchronize our watches. It's 5:21. Go ahead, Brad.
My name's Brad Widenar. I'm an instructional coach at the high school.
Jackie White, principal at Marshtown High School.
Janelle Hawk, instructional coach at the high school.
Michael Dale, associate principal at the high school.
All right, and I'm sure that you are aware of some of the demographics at across the district, but if we can go to the next slide, then you'll see some of the demographics that we have going on at the high school. And we are at a population of 1425 as we start our bubble classes moving through with our free and reduced lunch, almost 60%, and then the distribution by ethnicities of our student population. And as you recall, H is Hispanic, A Asian, B African American, I Native American, P Pacific Islander, white, and then mixed. M is mixed. We do have 98 full-time staff with an additional 7.66 part-time people coming in, like Mr. Gosling comes in, Captain Jones comes in, Miss Banks from central office comes in. So a lot of part-time people, and then we also have 33 our classified staff. That includes secretaries and paraprofessionals. Next slide, please. Again, we have 27% ELL students, special education is 12%, migrants about 3.2%. Dual language students, of the 225, 64 are participating in a dual language at the high school, or 4.5%. And then we'll talk more about extracurricular participation, but we're at 42%. I think Mrs. Smith shared all of the building attendance center plans earlier this school year. You can see there the mission statement for the district and the beliefs of the district. The MHS core values, building goals, and power metrics were all vetted by our staff, and we did an activity with them to come up with these core values and our building goal areas, as well as the metrics. Our BLT cleaned up the wording so that it made sense. So if I can go to the next slide, then we'll begin focusing on the core values. So at the high school, we do believe that students are resilient. We're just now starting to really see them bounce back. And some of our data, as we face the reality of our data and what's happened because of COVID and the social emotional turmoil that it presented for some students, we do feel strongly that they're starting to come back and they're remembering how to be students again in that regular classroom versus that virtual environment or even that hybrid model. We also believe that collaboration is important, not only among staff and with students, but with parents and the community members. And we believe that continuous learning is not just for students, but is also for the staff as they engaged. Today was a great day of professional development. We saw a lot of excitement coming off of a 3-day weekend. And then it is important that everyone in the building accepts responsibility for their actions so that they can just demonstrate a commitment to not only each other, but also to our community. Next slide, please. And I'll turn it over to Brad.
Okay, for our first building goal is about student achievement, and you can see there that we want our students to achieve in terms of reading and math and science, and we measure those by the ISASP. We also measure those by A reading and A math tests that assessments that we give 3 times a year. We want our students to be on track to graduate and earn the credits within each given year. So that they can be on track to do that. We'll want a 90% graduation rate and 85% proficiency to the standards, and we'll talk about some of that data here as we progress too. So here are some of the fast reading data that we've tabulated, and basic rundown is that you have one bar that shows the fall, one bar that shows the winter, and here later on in May we'll add a third that'll show the spring, and you want those numbers, those bars getting greater the further to the right you go, right? So you want at benchmark or at target in college pathways, you want those to be higher than before. I think what you see here is that we're starting to see some, and we see some growth. You'll see this as well on the next slide, that there are students in the blank, and that means they haven't taken the tests. And we want to have those numbers decrease, but this year being what it is, we saw an increase, I think, in students who didn't take the A reading and A math test. What we did notice as we disaggregate some of this data is that our students who are exited from ELL services, they've gone 6-7 years with us, are starting to score more like the other subgroups. And that's really pretty encouraging too. And we hope to continue that work. So if you go to the next slide. Here we see, this is sophomore data, looks somewhat similar. And we use this data to help target some interventions for our students in 9th, 10th, and 11th grade, especially if they're not already targeted from an IEP or ELL services. And so we'll pull those kids in during in ENR and give them some reading help and some math help as we progress. So one of the things that we did notice, you have to back up, you're just a step ahead of me. we give students the SABRS, which is a social, academic, emotional behavior risk screener, and we've noticed that kids have, we've seen more risk, right? More risk behaviors. The some and the high risk have gone up, and so we've, I think that was part of the impetus for Mr. Kretzinger and getting a grant to have outside service providers come in and give SEL and as well as mental health services.
So Brad briefly touched on that we do have a period during the day where we can provide academic intervention. We also can provide intervention for social emotional. So we have the grant. We have a center associates that comes in and meets with kids individually. That he also does 2 different small groups. We have Satusi coming in for a small group. We have youth shelter services coming in for a small group. We've tapped into some teachers who have a school counseling endorsement. their other teachers to do some small groups with students. So we're trying to be as creative as we possibly can to use that time and support not only intensive interventions for mathematics and reading, but also for social emotional learning. Here is from our school's state report card, just a big screenshot. And the dot represents where the state is at. And so what we know is when students come to us at the high school, we can help them grow in math and in language arts. So we are doing better in this area. Then when we look at percent proficient, the opposite is true. They come to us as they are. They're proficient, they're not proficient. Our hope is always to move 100% of them to proficient. That's not always the reality, but we do help them grow. And that's important, that we help them grow. And we are shown that year after year, that when they're at the high school with us and attending regularly, they will show growth. Next slide, please. We talked about graduation rates as well. As you look at the 3-year graduation rate, so 2019 BC, before COVID, 86.27. Class of 2020, extra supports with Gear Up, that was the year of COVID. We did hit that 90%. Of course, we had a later graduation for them. We spent more time working on credits in that last semester when they had to do 6 weeks of learning. Anybody we could get our hands on to earn a credit that semester, that really attributed to that 90%. My senior counselor from last year said 83.75. Well, it looks terrible here. She said we were excited about that because it was that first year after going into, we were in hybrid last year, remember? And kids were still struggling. But what's important in here is to notice that between the subgroups, if our Hispanic population is 55%, we're closing that gap in terms of graduation. They're meeting the other subgroups as you look at it. And just recall that some of those other subgroups like Pacific Islander, Native American, and Indian African American are pretty small when you look at it by 12th grade only. So it's easy to hit 100% if maybe you have 3 kids who are Native American, right? Okay. So this year's group of 330 seniors, 8 of them have already completed. 12 students are working on completing their AA before they graduated from high school. 282 are on track to graduate on time. For the remainder, we'll have a second graduation on June 30th, and hope that they will take advantage of all of our summer school activities, so that we can increase the numbers who are ready. And last year, we had 36% of our students who were college and career ready or Bobcat ready. We are currently at 34%, so we're still pushing this last 6 weeks of school to get our students Bobcat ready as well.
Go back one.
Back one side, Amy. There you go.
So last year, we purchased a program called Mastery Connect, and that program works with Canvas, although it's also standalone. And what we use that for is to have assessments, to provide assessments that gives us this type of data, which is how well students are doing on the standards we have deemed to be the priority standards. Right at the moment, we are still learning this program and still practicing with it, so we're asking teachers to report out on 2 standards per quarter, which is 8 in total. And some are going way above that. But what you can see here, you'll notice the red, green, and yellow. And the green is students who have mastered or shown proficiency on those standards, and red are the students that aren't quite there yet. This is a great conversation piece for teachers in our PLCs. They can look at this and they can say, Teacher A had more students that showed red than teacher B, so then they can have conversations about how can teacher B share information or share strategies to help them. It's a great conversation tool. But also, as we are working, as Mrs. Wyatt said earlier, we do really well with growth, and this is a way of showing how we are helping students grow, by showing where they're not quite meeting proficiency and standards, but also as we get better at creating those assessments and using this data, hopefully we will show growth also in the proficiency as shown on ISAS, because then we'll be able to really hone in on those standards as well and be able to test students multiple times over the year so that we can see proficiency in that area. So still learning how to use it, but it's providing very valuable data at the moment. And if you look at the next slide, this shows in a particular class of the standards that have been assessed in this particular class, which includes all the teachers that teach that class. 67.1% of the students have mastered all of the standards so far. And so, as was mentioned before, we have ENRs where they can come in for enrichment or targeted intervention. And 13% of those kids right there that haven't mastered the standards, the teachers automatically can look at that real quickly and see, these are kids we need to pull in for extra help. Whereas the ones that are yellow, near mastery, those are probably kids that we can talk to and give a little bit extra support during class time. So it's a great way to look at, get a good picture of how students are doing, how they're progressing, and what we need to focus on to help build their skills so that they can be more successful.
So our second area was on climate, which included emotional and physical safety reported by students and staff, and we do not have our Iowa Youth Survey results back yet. And then we will also be administering the Conditions for Learning Survey, which is also a state survey. And then our second measure is 95% of students will have 0 to 1 major behavioral referrals. So when we, on the next slide, Amy, when we look at, again, this is a snippet from our school report card from last year's Conditions for Learning. There are 5 areas that are measured in the Conditions for Learning through this survey given to students and then also teachers and parents. Physical safety, we did better than the state did. Student-to-student relationship, we did better. Adult-to-student relationship, we did better. Emotional safety, as reported by students, we also did better. And in fact, that was one of our greatest strengths. Boundaries and expectations, as you can imagine, and after you've seen some of the data that we've already presented, is a challenge for us. So tomorrow is our first day to administer the new Conditions for Learning for 2022. But last week, we spent some time working with students in their focus groups and asked them to answer a few questions about this area on boundaries and expectations, and we are ready to, and then our staff looked at that data today, so I'm pretty excited about some opportunities for us to improve in this area and work with students. And some students said, there's not a problem, while other students said, you need to review this more frequently. Okay, that's feedback. Let's take it. Let's do it. They also asked about having the rules and expectations like pretty visible to them, which we can build into our CKH, or Capturing Kids' Hearts, activities when we work with students who are having challenging behaviors. So it was a pretty exciting day for us in terms of learning and having and using the feedback from students to improve as a school. Go ahead, Michael.
Yeah, so the next measurable we look at as far as climate goes, we look at our office referrals. And at the high school, when teachers submit referrals, they fall into 1 of 2 categories, minors or majors. Minors are typically behaviors and things that are handled at the classroom level, because when it comes to addressing student behavior, it's really all hands-on-board approach. So one of our metrics that we look at as far as our major referrals, which could be classroom behaviors that escalate into a pattern to the point where they need to have administrative intervention, or more serious behaviors, things like fighting, vandalism, vaping, things of that nature. Our goal is obviously to be at 95% of our students that do not have any major referrals, which we've fallen a little short of, which, looking back at our Conditions for Learning, boundaries and expectations was our biggest area of needed growth. Right now, what we're seeing is we're pretty much in the same boat as a lot of our partners statewide, as we're seeing an uptick in behaviors and things of that nature. We're not immune. But we are looking at different ways we can be proactive about addressing the behaviors and things that we see within the building. So right now, we know about 6% of our population are kind of our heavy hitters, the ones we typically see day in and day out most frequently. And as administrators, incorporating our counselors and really a number of people, our SRO, JCL, what approaches can we have to address these things? So some different things we've done on the proactive side. We're engaging with some of our community partners, places like YSS, Atusi,
Center Associates, Gracie May, where we can bring in and do small group sessions with some of our students. The ones that we identify that are maybe in more need of maybe some mental health supports or some substance abuse support in that. Because as we know, student behaviors are a communication of something else that's going on. So we're looking at more the proactive approach on how we can address and support our students. Anything from outside providers or just engaging with families and students in the problem-solving process. So that's something we do quite frequently.
Is most of the staff trained on capturing kids' cards?
And then moving into our third building goal is student engagement, how we measure students' level engagement as far as the school. So metrics that we're looking at, we obviously look at our attendance. Attendance, kids being in class is going to be the #1 indicator for student success. Then we look at our dropout rate, our goal being less than 50 dropouts in a year. And the last thing is looking at number of students that are engaged in the building beyond just the academics and their involvement in activities. Next slide. So when we look at attendance rates here, just to kind of clarify the data that you're looking at, broken down by grade level, we're looking at percentage of students that fall under certain categories. So a non-chronic would be students that have 90% or better attendance. Our in danger are students that are in attendance between 80 and 90% of the time. And then our chronic absenteeism is listed as 80 or below 80%, so 20% or more of the time that they're absent. Our ADA at the bottom, that's our average daily attendance. So if you look at our percentage of students that are in class on a daily basis, you can see the indicators there. Our tendencies that we're seeing as far as attendance goes, we're pretty much following the state trend as far as we tend to see that increase in chronic absenteeism as we get older. We're a little bit ahead of the trend or a little bit farther beyond, but things that we've done in this approach, again, trying to be on the more proactive side, the district has engaged and kind of an overall system for addressing attendance issues. Our building is fortunate enough that we have an attendance specialist, CC, that we partner with. So things that we do to address attendance with our students, anything from at the beginning level, making home contacts, whether it's contacts from our attendance secretary, sending attendance letters home. When we identify students that are becoming more chronically absent or at higher risk, we pull those students and parents in for attendance meetings where we set expectations to try to problem solve. In some circumstances or cases, there's certain barriers or things that are keeping students from attending. So we try to address those. In other areas, we tend to find that there's students that perhaps the traditional setting of the high school is not the best fit. So we try to find a setting or a fit that's more conducive to their attendance and their engagement levels. So really it's an all-inclusive approach. It does include a lot of people, including our building administrators, school counselors, our attendance specialists. In certain circumstances, if we might even pull in our school resource officer and our juvenile court liaison officer. So as the district is going, we're working on kind of that more systematic approach, that vertically aligned attendance process. And right now it's a work in progress, but even though the data may show that it's kind of an area of concern, from someone that's worked in this process day in and day out every day, I can tell you that having that attendance specialist has been a real game changer for us to be able to make connections with families and students that we otherwise wouldn't have the time to or wouldn't have the ability to connect with as regularly as we can. Next slide. Jackie, you want to cover this one?
So I need to clarify, dropout rates is different than graduation rates. Graduation rates are specific to the senior class, and how many were in the original freshman class is how that rate is calculated. Dropout rates, it's applicable actually to grades 7 through 12. This would represent 9 through 12 at the high school. And again, our numbers have increased. A direct effect of COVID. Before COVID, we were really reducing the numbers and keeping them down and around that 50 number, which was, it's very hard to do that, but we were achieving that. And then as students, some of them never came back to us. So we're dealing with that. It's an ugly number, but we will continue to work on reducing that. But one of the things you will notice in this data is that, again, that gap is closing between the ethnic groups. And so we again, every student matters, and every student has a story, and every student has to have a different plan, so we are working them one at a time. Activities involvement?
So the other metric that we look at as far as student engagement is look at their engagement levels beyond the academic, beyond the classroom. As a former activities director, my experience has been students that are engaged in things beyond the classroom, whether it's a co-curricular or extracurricular, are going to perform better academically. So our goal is to have our students participate in more than just the academic side. Looking at our rate, how we get these numbers, all of our rosters from our athletics to our student clubs are all rostered in Infinite Campus, so we're able to pull number of students that we have participating in something. If my counts were correct, we have 22 different athletic teams at Marshalltown High School, including like cheerleading, dance, and we also have 29 student clubs and co-curriculars that we roster. So you look at our attendance, or our activities involvement, our percentages, we're holding pretty steady. We had a drop last year, which was kind of anticipated with the restrictions and things that we would have had in place. There were certain activities and things we just couldn't host. We couldn't host plays, some of our concerts, things of that nature. So that would have automatically created a dip in our participation rates. Things that we're looking for to kind of increase this area, hopefully they'll be beneficial to us, is always just finding new activities and things that kids want to participate in. So one of the things we have on docket for next year is the Incorporation of Esports. For some of our kids, that's online gaming, whether it's role-playing game. There's a whole state association competition, state level competition the students get involved with. We've got some staff members that are very passionate about e-gaming. We've got lots of students that will sit at lunch and they'll spend their entire lunch period playing games. So hopefully this will provide just another avenue for our students who might not necessarily find something they connect with, to connect with on that level and to increase the student engagement on that. And then also hopefully with the participation in New Athletic Conference, being able to kind of level the playing field as far as competition rates go, we'll hopefully see as one of those unintended or intended consequences to see an increase in participation in our athletics.
So in conclusion, some of the things that we're looking forward to already, as we had an opportunity to examine this data, is to continue working with Mastery Connect and identifying students who need support, who aren't hitting that proficiency in our priority standards. Our at-risk programming continues to go from not only at the 12th grade level, but we're also looking at that 9th grade level and trying to catch them sooner. So they're not in danger by the time they're 12th grade, trying to get them back on track throughout 9th and 10th grade. We look forward to using Panorama, which is the state system, to document our intervention plans for students. We did do, I mentioned before, a lot of targeted intervention in math and reading. That data needed to be stored somewhere. And kids are moving in and out of those groups based on data all the time. And so we see Panorama now that it's available to secondary as an opportunity for us to grow. In climate, we will go use focus group information with parents, students, and staff. We did just students this time. We'll do that again in the fall and follow some recommendations out of those focus groups. We'll continue to work on capturing kids' hearts and move beyond our social contracts and 4 questions to those consequences, which the students had strongly suggested for us. In terms of engagement, we want to increase the connections between career pathways and work-based learning experiences for our students so that they see the value of their education as they move on to life after high school, and then identify research evidence strategies to increase parent engagement.
Other questions?
No, I read through this at home, and I appreciate your coming and talking to us and explaining things to us. The only suggestion I had is you've got to identify research evidence strategies to increase parent engagement. Are there research evidence and strategies for increasing student engagement as far as the attendance rate, the athletic participation, club participation? Maybe look into some of that.
There's lots of research out there. And,
yeah,
and
maybe look at some of that.
And if we knew that, we'd go on the show with that right there,
I'm
make
sure
lots
you
of
would.
money. Today was a day, as we put this together, it's ugly data. It is, but I remember being at this table a year ago and crying about how bad my students were struggling with school, and it's better. It's better.
You mentioned at the beginning of your presentation the blank students. So what do you do to get those kids to test? I mean, are they not testing because their attendance or?
Usually, yes, usually if you looked at, especially that was, Brad's report was on 9th and 10th grade, which, if you saw a pattern, you saw a pattern developing with the 9th and 10th grade students and not engaging, and so you're right. We will, in some of these things, we literally, like the ELPA 21, which is 100% participation required, we were tracking kids down to the last day, going to homes and those kinds of things. So we will do the same thing with ISASP, the conditions for learning, they have to take it, we will track them down and pull them into the library, do what we can to get all of these things done.
So these are assessments that have a window, so if they don't get in between that window, then we can't test. Okay.
And we hope to catch them again in the spring.
I think it's really interesting that your data shows, if you compare your attendance rate to your graduation rate, I totally agree with you. If kids show up and they come to school, they're going to be successful. I mean, it's definitely parallel, the 80-some%. If you have the 32% who aren't coming to school and you're graduating 83% of your kids. So, yeah, if we can figure out what that magic touch is to have kids be engaged in some form of education all the way through their 12th grade year with the support that you all are able to give them, they would be successful and your graduation rate would be higher. Absolutely true.
I would like to echo Bonnie a little bit. I really like the data you provided at the last slide, number 19. What I'd be curious about is on the activity side, the participation of 43%, what does that correlate to the attendance and graduation rate of those 43% that go out for sports or clubs or, do we have the data on that?
That would be an interesting piece of data, but there's one particular example I can think of a student who was very engaged all throughout their season. And as soon as that season was over, has been completely disengaged. And we've been trying to set up meetings, and they get them on the calendar, and then there's a no-show, and we set up another one. So obviously, there is a direct correlation when they are engaged. So if we can get kids engaged in all 3 seasons, esports is a great opportunity. Not everybody can compete, but everybody can participate and practice and play and go online, and as long as they do their schoolwork too.
Yep.
And that's, I think there have been other times that Adam has shared when our teams have earned academic honors, right? So we need all of the teams to earn those academic honors. And then again, there's a time during the school day when coaches can bring their teams in and do study tables. And then that will increase that academic opportunity.
Well, it seems to me if we want them to be engaged, they need to see high school is useful. There's a reason to do this. And then they need to be connected with their peers, so that there's someone that cares if they show up there. And then at least one teacher needs to connect. So that,
And that's a great survey question. That does show up in the data, as there's still a number of at least over 100 students who do not feel connected to an adult at school. In that student-to-adult relationship.
Your participation number of 600, are those students counted only once, even though there may be in 3 activities?
Right.
They're just counted once.
Gotta love pivot tables. Yes, you can get that.
Got it, thanks.
Sorry, we have gone over, sorry.
Any other questions? Well, thank you.
Thank you.
What's that mean? Boundaries and expectation, what's that mean? Do we set them? We don't know the rules. Oh.
We do.
Yeah, so this is the time of year that we start to bring any recommended proposals for our handbooks forward for changes. And so we don't really have a particular order. Ronnie, you want to kick off with the elementary?
Okay, on the elementary handbook, not a lot of major changes. The obvious ones are always there, putting in the new PD days, the new calendar. Just a couple of things that we put in that we've added for this year, and I don't think it got highlighted up there, but on the first page on bicycles, we just simply added a statement about it is the student responsibility to secure their bicycle in the appropriate area during the school day, make sure that it stays there. We added a couple things and just trying to really emphasize safety. Over on safety reminders, this is actually toward the very end of the handbook. I reworded it. It used to talk about the crosswalks, and I reworded to put the crossing guards will be located at crosswalks in which students are encouraged to utilize those. So that's never been in there. It's always been implied, but we just thought we'd be pretty explicit since, we honestly, all of our schools have had close calls with people running stop signs and kids going through. So everyone makes a concerted effort to make sure that we have crossing guards both in the morning and the afternoon. So that was just a piece that we added as far as the elementary piece went. And that's basically all the changes we have in that one.
Are there any questions for Ronnie about the elementary handbooks? Are you going to do the virtual as well?
That sounds great. Virtual, obviously same stuff. Anything that was dated will be changed. The only thing that will remain a little bit tentative is the schedule. Obviously, those are things that Shauna and Erica and I will meet with as far as the K-6 piece goes over the summer to make sure that we're going to maintain the same type of synchronous and asynchronous schedule that we had last year. So that is something, like obviously we did not have PK this year. We won't have PK next year, so we'll be looking at that schedule and seeing how effective it was and seeing what changes we need to be made this summer.
So while you're up here, K-6 virtual?
Yes, that was it.
He just did it.
That was it?
Yep.
Okay. Okay.
Is the preschool one separate? It looks like preschool separate.
We didn't actually have preschool this year. That was the original plan.
Okay.
So that's why it's in this one right here. That's why I've got it highlighted. That piece obviously will come out since there's not a preschool piece. Yeah.
I meant the handbook.
Oh, it is separate. Yes, I think Shauna's got that one.
Oh, okay.
Sorry.
Thank you.
I'm done.
I actually have one more question. I understand the expectation with virtual that students will be independent. But do we have an expectation with parents that for the younger students, especially grades, fourth grade and below, that there's an adult supervising their schooling from home?
It's recommended. I mean, obviously, we have some situations where there is an adult, or maybe it's a grandparent. We've had some kids that stay with grandparents who are not really technologically literate. I meet, and I assume I'll do it again this year, that we do a couple of orientations for parents that are required, that I'm online with the parents. We're talking about what their expectations are along with the students. So, it's recommended, and even in some areas when the parents there, they really aren't very helpful as far as the technology goes, but we have a time in the afternoon set up to where the parents can, or the access for the child, that we can supplement what they're doing, and we've had pretty good communication between us and the parents. So if they're having trouble, we'll get with tech and we'll figure out what's going on, whether it's something they don't know how to do, or maybe it's a technology problem since it's a hotspot or the internet's weak. My administrative assistant, Elizabeth Chavez, actually helps a lot with this. So she'll have parents come in, especially, I'm fortunate that she's bilingual, so she'll help a lot of my Hispanic parents that come in and may not know how to do it, and she'll walk them through step by step. So, we may not have them there, but we try to take steps to give them the support they'll need to make sure the kids can
do this.
Yep.
All right.
Anything else? Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ronnie.
Okay. All right, preschool. There are not many changes. I know that through the preschool audit, we had to think through our community partners, and we have one preschool handbook that represents all of Marshalltown, including our community partners. The big change for our community partners that have religious ed was really pulling out that religious piece from the handbook that they had represented, and that's essentially what we had to do for the preschool handbook, and our preschool audit has been approved through the state, so we're pretty excited about that. But when you scroll through, you're not going to see a lot of highlights, because what Marshalltown Community School District had in place was already adequate. It was really focusing on the religious side. Any questions?
Okay.
Thank you.
Eric's here. You want to come up?
Good evening. I guess we can start with, we got MBA up. A couple of minor changes on page 3 of the MBA handbook. I'm proposing to add a statement that says, students and families should be aware that the learning management system is available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Students who are off pace, I'm often sending remind messages or email messages to them and their parents, politely suggesting that they work on the weekend if they're not going to work during the week. And so some people didn't realize they could work on the weekend. It's just bringing kind of a traditional school mentality into a non-traditional sort of environment. So clarifying that for parents. And an issue related to that also on page 6, my only other change to this handbook except for dates, et cetera, is that reminding folks that the Chapter 299 of the Iowa Code, which is the truancy attendance provisions, also apply to the virtual environment. We did have a few situations come up this year at the secondary level where we had some folks requesting virtual kind of as a way to, as it played out, to dodge the compulsory education laws of Iowa. And so the county attorney wanted us to clarify in our, or the assistant county attorney actually, wanted us to clarify in our handbook how I would measure attendance. And it's through engagement through the logs of the system, and that would make truancy proceedings and truancy prosecutions easier for those people who are not engaging in school or education. It really relates to what the high school team was talking about in terms of that lack of engagement piece and that lack of showing up. And sometimes the high school or myself at MLA would be nudging these people a little bit about their attendance, and we'd hear, oh, hey, we just want to go virtual. Well, it was just a way to kind of postpone the next step in the attendance process. So really going to try to head that off in the future. So that's one of my other suggested changes. The MLA handbook is up now, with the exception of dates and a couple of language cleanups where I think I might have made some small grammatical errors. There are no procedural changes or policy changes proposed for that handbook.
Any questions?
Thank you, Eric.
Thanks, Eric.
Thank you.
You're right behind that post for me, Jackie, so.
I was wondering if you couldn't see me back there. Okay, so first footnote was to change the date for the new handbook and also to begin removing all of the language related to any mitigation strategies that we were implementing due to COVID. So obviously the table of contents will have to be updated. You will note there that our conference name has to change, needs to be updated. We also need to put in the new calendar as well as add in esports in that table of contents. With the large number of students that we are anticipating next year, we are moving to 4 lunches, so we have a new bell schedule there because I cannot get 1,400 kids in 3 lunches. It's just impossible. It's nice in the fall and the spring when we can eat outside, but in the winter, I still have to have them be able to sit and enjoy their meals. So we'll run continuously 30-minute lunches. Campus is now closed. Sorry, Taylor. Then there's information about the board to be updated and one typographical error there on page 12. I just copy things from the the board website, there weren't any phone numbers. I'm not sure if Mrs. Stanley or Mr. Wall wanted their phone numbers included. On page 15, we just added the word guardian. And then on page 16, some information about dismissals. This year, we did allow juniors to dismiss during study hall, just because of, again, social distancing that we had, trying to maintain and keep that study hall smaller. We're looking to close that down for juniors. Activity tickets, on page 18, I just changed the name of the athletic conference to Iowa Alliance Conference. On page 19, ID cards, there's no discipline associated with getting a new ID card. Those are free. If you abuse that policy, I may begin to have a little conversation with you about that. On page 20, again, with lockers, that situation has now changed, and if the student needs a locker, they can request a locker, or we're using PE lockers, those kinds of things. Still have silver cord. Student fees, took out the word October 1 and used the word policy wording of within the first 30 days of school. That was on page 23. On page 25, we needed to take out the wording meeting every day, because in block schedule, we don't meet every day, but 1 credit is equivalent to 2 semester courses. We had to make that clear. On page 26, 8th hour credit recovery, we took out just some language there so that we don't have to be as specific or limiting in the courses that are available for credit recovery as we work with students to improve. Page 27, we just took out the wording extended day. We don't use that phrase anymore, but we do use academics as support center. And we certainly want kids to use the extended time after school to go to that academic support center for additional help versus just hanging out in the cafeteria and loitering. It's time to go home, you guys. On page 28, we took out the words ardent because we are not working with ardent at this time. Page 29, visited with the school nurse, and we have taken all of the COVID stuff out, except to say that if you have COVID-19, you should contact your healthcare provider for your next steps. Okay, skipping to page 35. Mr. Isgrig added the words negative in terms of expected. We want our kids not to lead. Unsportsmanlike conduct does include leading negative cheers from the crowd. Again, changing the conference name there. On page 40, lunchtime, again, we took out the words 9th and 10th grade because campus is closed to everyone now for lunch. On page 43, we added the new open enrollment date, took out the old one. In terms of activities, on page 44, we have some students, you would think it would be common sense, but I guess it wasn't so common, that if you are suspended from a sport, if you're suspended because of code of conduct or academic eligibility, that you can go out for a new sport to make up for that, right? So that your regular sport, you don't have any suspension time. But they didn't seem to understand that you have to finish the season. So we put that in writing now, so just to be clear, because we had quite a bit of arguing over that this year, and it's easier if Mr. Isgrig doesn't have to keep dealing with that. On page 49 and 48 and 49, again, we were just changing when the seasons actually start, changing the athletic conference name again. On page 50, we added information about esports, how students can get involved. We also included that they are held accountable under the student code of conduct as well as the academic scholarship rule once we go into get involved in that conference for that. We will add the link to the new Iowa Alliance Conference as soon as it is up and available. Page 52, it turned out dark instead of yellow. Just a reiteration that the student must complete the entire season in good standing in order to receive their letter award. Again, we had students who would quit, and then because they're seniors and they'd been involved other 3 years, they thought they should get their letter and when they didn't end in good standing. On page 54, more information about that conduct suspension, completing the entire season, can't say it enough. Esports, what percentage you would be suspended if you violate the code of conduct. And esports, again, will run 3 seasons, fall, winter, and spring, so depending on what season you're in. And I believe that's it. A lot of details, because the kids want us to be specific, right? I told you that once already. Questions?
We have, there's 3 other handbooks that were provided. Transportation, which did not have any changes. And then the middle school and Lenahan, there are very few or minimal changes. We'll make sure that representatives from each of those buildings are here at the next meeting in the event that there are any questions prior to asking the board for approval of those. So all of these will come back now that you've had an opportunity to hear and see the recommended changes, and we'll ask for approval at the next meeting.
You guys ready?
All right, hello. I'm Aaron Seeberger, and as President Hyman said, this is Phoebe Hermanson, and this is Taylor Jones. So I realized the last couple of meetings I've kind of been talking about solo and ensemble like you knew exactly what it was. So does anyone not know what solo and ensemble is? I would gladly kind of give an overview and explain it. Anyone need an explanation? Want an explanation? All right, well, solo and ensemble was last Saturday, and we came home with a couple D1s, which in the ballot is considered a superior performance. And then I think we had maybe 2 D3s and a couple D2s. And this was only in the choir because at the recital that MHS had 2 weeks before solo and ensemble, the band recorded their auditions and sent those in. So the band was all over, band and orchestra were all virtual. But the choir, we came home with the D1s and D2s. I don't know how the band or orchestra did as far as ratings, but that was how that went for the choir. And then because that is over, we only have 6 weeks of school left, so we're starting final projects and getting ready for the last concerts of the year.
Okay. So on the same day the solo ensemble was at Valley, we had a track meet at Valley. So the highlight of that was our senior Lily Duff won the discus event at that meet, and she had a new PR of 122 feet and 2 inches, and that's a lot better than she was throwing last year, even at state. So she's having a really good season.
All right, currently Bobcat Tennis, the boys' team record is 4-1, but that is mostly due to crazy weather. The last couple, my brother's in tennis, and he said, we've had 10 meets that have been canceled so far because of tennis is so weather reliant. If the court's wet, you can't play. If it's super windy, really hard to play. And so their 4-1 is really good, but they've also had a lot of meets canceled, and I know that's the same with the girls' team. All right.
Last week we had the MHS play, which was happening on Friday and Saturday. So here's some pictures from that.
Let's see.
Okay, so Friday, the girls' track team had our annual Easter egg hunt practice, and it's always kind of our favorite thing to do. Normally, our coaches hide the eggs around like the track and the football field, but this year the boys were on the track, so we had the area from the front of the school to Olive Street to the tennis courts to find all the eggs. And personally, I was pretty happy with my performance. Last year, I got 0, and this year I got 15, so I'm pretty happy with that. And then on Saturday, we headed to the Blue Oval at Drake for the Jim Duncan invite, and we all had a pretty good meet. Some highlights were we had 800-meter season's best from Micah Blevins and Rachel Smith. They were both on the 4x8. Last year they went to state, so they ran 2:27, 2:29. Sarah Huffman, she's a sophomore, I think, right? Yeah, okay. She had 100-meter hurdles season best. And then Kendall C., she's a senior. She had a really good day, doing season best in both her 100-meter and 200 meters. And then my favorite is my good friend Sydney. She's a senior. She's been participating in track since 7th grade. And she's never broken 6 minutes in the 15. Last year she ran a 6:01, and so on Saturday she finally broke 6 minutes, and by a bit actually, because she ran a 5:53. So we were super happy for her. Oh, this is also me. Okay. Last week we had our meal packaging event that I told you guys about, the last one. It was really successful. We packaged all 20,000 meals in under an hour because we had so many awesome volunteers. And all the meals are going to stay in Marshall County at places like the House of Compassion, Sal's Kitchen, and the Salvation Army.
Bonnie, not to brag or anything, but I think our production team
We
might
were the
have
best.
been one of the highest.
We were the best. And did we have, what are we going to call this? What were you? Quality management there at the end of the table. Oh my gosh, 2 noodles. I'm telling you, 2 noodles. But he's our 2 noodle dude. He kept us on target.
For upcoming events, we have tennis versus Johnson, which was today, right? Today. And then the Cedar Falls varsity girls track, which was actually canceled. And then 9 and 10 boys track at Waukee, which was also canceled, right? Yeah. Okay. And then tomorrow, hopefully we'll have a better day, and we have girls golf versus Fort Dodge, tennis versus Des Moines North, boys track at Northview Middle School, and soccer at Ankeny. And then for the rest of the week, we have some more track, golf, and tennis throughout the week. And then on Saturday, there's actually Special Olympics at the high school. And then there's a tennis meet on Saturday for the boys at Northwest.
And that's the last slide. We almost made a slide for prom, but the title was Prom, and it's happening. So there wasn't really a whole lot to plug about prom, but that is happening on Saturday, and that's 2 Saturdays, the 30th, yes. And so we're super excited about that, and that's kind of the rave at MHS right now.
So can I give you a slide for 2 weeks from now? Prom, it happened.
Yeah, there you go. Good for you. We'll put that on. All right. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Dr. Ryan.
Righty. We have concluded our negotiations and meet and confers for the year, so just the remaining ones that we have to go over today. First is transportation. We are recommending a 25-cent increase to all bus driver steps, $1.25 per hour for bus monitors on each step because they are now on a salary schedule as of last year or this year. And then the activity trips, 7 days a week from $12 an hour to $15 an hour. And we're pretty excited about these changes because the request, I'm sorry, that's not correct, Paulette.
That was going to be my question.
Yeah, sorry. It should, if you open the meet and confer, it should say 50 cents increase, not 25 cent. Yes. So I apologize. There in that text, it should say 50-cent increase. They requested 25 cents, but we were excited that we were able to give them 50 cents. So the text in there, what you're seeing right now is correct. So 50 cents, which they were pretty excited about, being that their representative had asked for a quarter.
Are there any questions for Dr. Ryan? If not, is there a motion to approve the recommendation?
So moved.
Second.
McGinnis, Faltus, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Motion carries 7-0.
Thank you, and we'll get that quarter changed to 50 cents there. The next is the tentative agreement that we came to with the Buildings and Grounds Group, and I do want to note that this is still contingent on their ratification, which should come early next week, I believe. So if you approve this, it will be contingent on the ratification, like I said. Across the board, a 3.13% increase, and then there were some minor contract language changes. We took out some titles that were non-existent, added some titles that just clarified what level building, nothing major, and then changed some pronouns so they were a little bit more inclusive.
Any questions? If not, is there a motion to approve the agreement contingent on ratification by the union?
Move to approve.
Lowry, Hernandez, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Motion carries 7-0.
Look at us go. Okay, so the next group of staff, we've never done this before. We have this group of staff that's kind of an other group. They're not necessarily part of the other groups, I guess. That's not very eloquent, but it's kind of this other group, I guess. And so we would like to, I'm going to be creating a handbook that will encompass this group, so you can see there at the top. So the HR administrative assistants, business office staff, you can read there. It's just this other group of staff, like I said, that's really not encompassed in any of the other groups. So we wanted to pull those folks out and just state that for that group, we recommend a 3% increase. And for example, our student resource specialist or our school resource specialist or our JCOs, they tend to be, in a sense, kind of clumped with the certified staff, but they are not covered. And so absent, recognition here with this other group, they really wouldn't have an increase that's been accepted or approved by the board. So we're pulling out this group of staff, recommending that 3% increase, which is the same as the certified staff. And then a couple of those folks being pulled out specifically. So the 2 HR administrative assistants to receive a $1.80 per hour increase, and that's to bring the position more in line with the Iowa workforce range for those positions. And then we have 3 hourly IT staff to receive $2 per hour increase, and then 1 with a $4 increase. And again, this is aligning with more comparable jobs in the area based on their education. I think. Oh, there we go. And then a 75-cent per hour increase for the payroll specialist for similar reasons as cited above. So everybody else in that group except these 3 bullets would receive the standard 3% increase. And then again, like I said, I will be creating an employee handbook for this group.
Are there questions about this one?
Where does your attendance specialist fall under?
So the attendance specialist is most in line with the 10-month secretaries.
Okay.
So same benefits, same type of calendar as those 10-month secretaries. And actually in the handbook appendix for that group, I'm going to add that title in there. But again, that is an ESSER-funded position as of right now. So this, I believe, is the last year for sure that job will be funded, and then we'll reevaluate. But as you hear consistently from the high school staff, that position has been invaluable to them. So hopefully we'll be able to figure something out.
Great, thanks.
Well, the ESSER funds are available till June of '24, so I think the plan was to
2 more years.
sustain those positions until those funds aren't available.
So it's 2 more school years. Thank you.
Other questions? If not, is there a motion to approve the recommendation?
So moved.
Second.
Lowry McGinnis, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Motion carries 7-0.
And then the last one on my list here would be for the 10 and 12-month secretary or administrative assistant group. Again, that's a meet and confer recommendation that we're proposing, and that is a 3.07% increase. And then I should note that all of these positions that have a step or a salary schedule, it also includes always an advance on the step if it's applicable to that individual. So 3.07% increase for this group with a step advancement if it applies to them, which is a 20-cent increase on each step.
Any questions? Is there a motion to approve the recommendation?
So moved.
Second.
Stanley McGinnis, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed, say no. Motion carries 7-0.
Thank you all very much.
And then you're going to talk about,
Yeah, for the administrators, meet and confer, as has been the case in the recent past, the administrators were asking for a similar increase to what our certified staff, the teachers, were receiving. So we're recommending the board approve a 3% increase at a cost of $111,874 for the administrative team. And then additionally, we would like to pay a comparable hourly rate as we are paying our teachers to administrators for their time supervising Saturday school. That would be a $50 an hour payment. Typically, I think summer school runs 3 to 4 hours on Saturday mornings, and this would be retroactive back to the beginning of the second semester, which would be January 18th, I think, or 19th. And then also, we would like similar hourly payment to our administrators who are certified trainers for CPI and provide this service periodically each year for training.
are there any questions for Dr. Schutte? Is there a motion to approve the recommendation?
Move to approve.
Second.
Faltis Hernandez, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Motion carries 7-0.
Thank you.
All right,
Policies.
we're at policies.
Okay. For the first readings, the policies that came forward to you at the last board meeting, none of them have had any changes since you last reviewed them. So 3 of the policies were new policies that we were asking the board to adopt from IASB. 411.5, classified employee assignment. 411.6, classified employee transfers. And 411.8, classified employee probational status.
So those we would need to adopt and waive the second reading. Yeah. Is there a motion to do that?
So moved.
Second.
Lowry Faltis, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Motion carries 7-0.
The other 2 first readings were amendments to existing policies, 413.2 classified employee retirement and 413.3 dismissal and suspension of classified employees. We adjusted these to align better with the ISB language, and Paulette had made a few adjustments in order to make sure that that the policies reflected our current practice. So I'd recommend approving the amendments to these 2 policies and waiving the second reading.
And yeah, on 413.3, and I don't know if I just missed this last time or not, but that first sentence is repeated again in the second paragraph.
Oh, yeah, probably don't need it twice.
So it seems to me, we just need to strike that first sentence needs to be deleted as well, I would say.
Yeah, we can do that.
Okay.
Do you want that to come back, or do you want it to be approved in that fashion?
Probably really ought to come back
Okay.
to take that out of there. The 413.2, is there a motion to amend and waive the second reading?
Move to approve.
Second.
Lowry Hernandez, all in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, say no. Motion carries 7-0.
Next.
Karina,
Okay, mine are easy. It's recommended to delete both 414.2 and 414.10 due to both being spoken for on policy 409.2.
are there any questions for Karina? If not, is there a motion to delete 414.2 and 414.10?
So moved. Second.
Stanley Faltis, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. They are deleted. Adam?
So you're just saying to take.
Or just delete, because it's the same.
Right.
I don't care what, I mean, one of them should get deleted.
Yeah.
So, Sean, just question about that one. So would that be coming back for a second reading?
I think that was just to point out the changes. Primarily.
Oh, so it's-
And this was to add information, and that was to point out the changes.
The change
in the
to it?
original. Yeah. I really don't think. Board wants to approve.
Well, if that was the intention, was not to duplicate that sentence, but just to show what was changed more clearly,
Yeah.
then I guess that's okay. If everybody's okay with that. We need a motion to approve it and waive the second reading.
What are we talking
Back to the one.
413.3.
about? Oh, okay.
If the intention is not to have the first two sentences of that policy be the same, just to have,
The first sentence with the edits was to show.
Was to show what
we
the changes were
had
made.
And what changes were made in that sentence. And then the second paragraph was the new embedding of
Was
the
the new
IASB
sentence.
language that included the sentence.
Okay.
Makes sense.
It really doesn't change the
It doesn't change the meaning.
It doesn't.
intent or anything.
No, mine was just more, it was a
Redundancy.
redundancy.
Yeah.
Do you need a motion for?
They need a motion to amend it and waive the second reading.
So moved.
Second.
McGinnis, Wall, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Okay. Now I don't even have to answer your question, Al.
So, had a really great meeting last week with Dale Bentledge over at Juicebox, the company that is helping us with our new website. We had a wireframes meeting again. That's a term, tech term for basically like the blueprint of how the website's going to look and how it will be navigated. So we, Dr. Schutte and I got to take a look at some proposed home pages, and that it would be a different and I think an improved experience in any of the cases for the examples they showed. So we are going to be meeting with the website task force to kind of run those by them and get their opinions about what features they like, if there's any that they don't prefer, or if there's any moving around of those features between the different options that we were shown. So just getting their feedback there. And beyond that, just working with Nora's office, we're doing the annual service awards. So for the newer board members, if you haven't heard what those are, we give those out at the end of the school year to honor staff for 1 year, 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, and 30 years with the district. So it's just a way of showing our appreciation for their service. So otherwise,
Any questions for Adam? Thanks, Adam.
okay, thank you.
Looking at reminders, Jan, you've got 2 policies for our May 2nd meeting. We've got a few committee meetings coming up. The Auditorium Foundation is meeting this week, as is internal communications, teacher qualities coming up in May, and the Equity Committee coming up in May. Committee reports. SIAC met last week. Who's that? Is that Leah and Bonnie?
Yep.
Anything to share?
We reviewed some data similar to what we reviewed tonight with the high school a little bit, the A reading and A math scores for
5th through 12th grade.
yeah, 5th through 12th. So we looked at those. You can see the progression. Like one of the comments that came up was very similar to what Mrs. Wyatt had said this evening. You know, just one of the comments from the SIAC group in general was that you can see growth in the students all the way through to the end of through 12th grade. Right, so you don't see kids plateauing in that high school level. They're continuing to grow throughout the entire education experience here, which was good. What else do we talk about? Oh, the teacher recognition signs.
They will be distributed on April 22nd to our businesses. They received over, I can't remember, 3,000, I knew it was a 3-something, 3,000 cards from students regarding their comments about teachers. And so they will be distributed, and Shauna shared some of the cards with us, and one of the most notable ones from Rogers Elementary that I remember about Mr. Miller. The best thing about him is that he is a boy. So you stop to think about how many elementary teachers are really male, and how many of our students may not have a male figure in their homes on a full-time basis. And so the best thing about Mr. Miller is he's a boy. And I've had the opportunity to be in Mr. Miller's class, and his structure and organization, he's a great role model for the kids in that class. So I'm glad he's a boy too. So that was good.
Any items for future agendas anybody would like to bring forward? Anything that anybody would like to point out that we've done to benefit the students in the Marshalltown School District tonight? I thought the scuba diving thing was pretty.
That's awesome.
That was pretty cool.
Yeah.
It's really awesome.
We're going to be offering some new extracurricular activities.
The E.
So I think
Club.
that'll be interesting. Yeah, I can see how it will be very popular.
Will we need different Chromebooks to power that, or?
There's a lot to iron out yet. Especially as it relates to cost, budget, approval of stipends, things like that. But it is exciting. They've been putting a lot of time into it. We've met with a couple different districts that have implemented an esports program across the state, different sizes, and then also meeting with Marshtown Community College, who will be implementing curriculum and a competitive team next year.
Well, that's it for the open session for tonight. I assume, Mr. Dale, I assume your student is not here yet? Okay. In which case, we will take a break And everybody else is free to leave. Thanks, guys.
Feel free to grab a walking taco.
Have
if
a
you
walking
haven't.
taco on your way out.
I'm gonna finish my walk.
They're made for walking.
These boots are